Okay, welcome everybody to the special Nescoin Citizen Advisory Committee meeting to discuss and consider a position statement on the proposed Tillamook County fireworks ordinance. My name is Nancy Vandal. I'm the chairperson for the NCAC and I have no conflicts. I'm going to ask the board members to please introduce themselves and state any conflicts.
My name is Alex Clark. I am the vice chairperson and I have no conflicts.
Thank you. Candace?
Candace Miller, secretary. I have no conflicts.
Thank you. Wyatt?
Wyatt Angelo, no conflicts.
Rand
Cook, no conflicts.
And I think that's all I see at the moment from the board. I think Susan is going to join us. Chris is traveling. So I think that's it. So could we also invite the attendees to please introduce yourselves as well. So I'm just going to call people because it's easier. Brandon, and you're welcome to turn on your camera if you'd like. Up to you. And you have to unmute.
Sorry about that. Yeah. Brandon Booza.
Okay, thank you. Welcome, Brandon. Matthew Gill.
Matt Gill.
Nice to see you. Al, and if there's more of you than one in a microphone, let me know because that can affect voting later. And I guess if you could state if you're a resident property owner or business owner as a member. So we have Karen is also there. Booza?
I'm here. Property owner, house owner.
Thank you. And Al Getz.
I'm a resident.
Thank you. Lori? And you're muted. If everybody could just unmute for the moment.
Lori Kovac. I'm a property owner and a resident.
Thank you. Hillary?
Hey, I'm Hillary Gibson. I am a homeowner in Nescoin Village.
Great. Good to see you. And Gary Billingsley?
Hi, Gary Billingsley, property owner and full-time resident.
Great. Thank you. Good to see you again, Gary. Or hear you anyway. Guy?
Guy Sievert, resident.
Thank you. Gary McLean? Thank you, muted, Gary. Well, Gary, unmute. I see a BM Allen.
Benjamin Allen, property owner and full-time resident.
Great, thank you, Benjamin. Kyle?
Hi, Kyle Booza. I'm son of Karen Booza and Brandon Booza.
Welcome. And Vicky?
Vicky Perhadich, resident, property owner,
Welcome.
full-time.
Glad you could be here. And thank you for all your help on this. Beth?
Hi, just
Hi.
joining. Beth Jones. I live up on Scherzinger Road.
Great, welcome. Jeff? Jeff Walton? And unmute. And Carol Hook? If any, see, I think it's Carol, Gary, and McLean, Gary and Jeff we haven't heard from, but if you guys could unmute, that would be great. Okay. But anyway, nice crowd. Who did I not call? Oh, no, I didn't, Tom. You're right at the top of my screen. Tom Sykes.
Sometimes editor and full-time resident owner.
And
I'm Tom Perhadich.
And Tom Perhadich. I missed our team.
Resident and property owner.
Thank you. So, and Tom, the two Toms and Wyatt and I worked on this together on this. And I see Ann Sipe also joined us. I think people are welcome, Ann.
Thank you.
Okay. Have I missed anybody else? Okay. Thank you. So I'm going to just go to the agenda real fast. So can everybody see that? So first of all, hopefully you all have seen the meeting packet. We're going to go through that in a moment. But we're just here today for the only thing on the agenda is this consideration of the proposed fireworks ordinance. We'll go into a little bit about the background, the process that we went through on this, and the documents. And then we're going to go through the position itself. And and then go into an action plan, a little bit about what we're going to do once the vote is taken. And then we're going to do the votes. So there'll be plenty of time for discussion, kind of between the position on the ordinance and before we vote on two different, on a motion and possibly more motions. So we have polls for that. And then there's a calendar at the end of the agenda of upcoming kinds of things. So the important thing right now is that on Thursday, May 28th at 6 p.m., there's going to be a public hearing, Tillamook County public hearing on the ordinance, and you can attend either in person or virtual. If you want to make public comment, you have to send an email to a link that we put in the email blast that Candace sent out a couple of days ago to let them know ahead of time that you want to speak. Or you can sign up to speak when you attend in person. You can also attend virtually one way just to listen or see a record at the end. Okay, any questions or comments on the agenda? Okay, going to agenda is approved as presented. So this now shows the meeting packet. Hopefully you've all seen it. The actual ordinance is here, and if you've taken a look at it, it's fairly simple. And the paragraphs that we're commenting about today are mainly on section 7 penalties, which they're changing, and then also a little bit about what the rules are today. But the main part of it is that section 7. When you hear section 7 being referred to, that's it. You can look at the ordinance yourself. We've also talked about parliamentary procedures summary chart in here. So when we get into, we're going to try to keep this so that it's relatively relaxed, but at some point we may, depending, this does describe how you do motions, how you can amend motions at the end. We'll talk about that a little bit more, and how you can take votes. If you have any questions, I know Michael Beachley was planning to be here, who's our parliamentarian, and you could send him a question through the chat, or you could send a question to everybody through the chat. If you want some help with this, we're very happy to help you. We don't want this to be intimidating at all. There's also an article from the Tillamook County Pioneer that the sheriff wrote about why he suggested this ordinance and why it's being put in as an emergency basis. And then we also have a summary in here of taking all information from the bylaws and the position statements and how we do this kind of thing, how we make a decision and communicate a decision to agencies. So you're welcome to look at that. But one thing to be aware of is that if we don't have total agreement, and there's a group that would like to have a minority report, we will work with that, and we'll tell you about that at the end of the vote if we need to do that. But there are options here to make sure this is fair for everybody to be heard. So are there any questions about these documents? Okay, so then the actual position statement and cover letter is here, and I hope a lot of you have already read it, but we're going to go through that in some detail today. So let me just go back to okay, so going into the actual agenda now under the background, I've been advised by the committee that I should give the key things up front. So I'm just going to say very briefly, because we'll be going into that later with the subcommittee, that the proposed ordinance that you saw, as I mentioned, the main thing is that the only change, there's no change to current law in terms of what is legal and what is not legal in terms of fireworks. It's really on section 7 downgrades the penalties from a Class B misdemeanor to a Class C violation, which is basically a fine. And Tom Prahadich and Wyatt Angelo will be talking quite a bit more about what that means. And then our proposed position in a nutshell is that we don't object to the majority of the ordinance, but we are concerned and oppose reducing the penalties against illegal and non-permitted fireworks. And we want to distinguish between legal fireworks and illegal non-permitted fireworks. And then we have some other requests for some things to happen that are bulleted in the cover letter and also elaborated on in the position statement about, as long as they've raised this issue, let's bring up what some of our concerns are. So that's basically it. The process is that on May 1st, I received an email from Sarah Absher, Community Development Director, notifying us of this emergency proposal of the proposed Tillamook fireworks ordinance. So we had to scramble because the last opportunity to provide input is this coming Thursday, May 28th. And we have certain restrictions on notices to our members, being a county agency. And so we scrambled, and on May 2nd, we sent out a notice after having an email conversation on the board to set up a special board meeting for May 9th to consider whether we want to comment. We held that we held that board meeting on May 9th and decided that yes, we did. We felt like it was an important thing for us to comment on. And we appointed a task force to draft a statement. And that task force is composed of Wyatt Angelo, Tom Prahadich, Tom Sipe, and myself. Our input can be provided in two ways. One is actual testimony in a public hearing, and the other is in writing. So the four of us have spent a great deal of time talking with many of you, also considering the work from the Community Plan Subcommittee that Tom Sipe will discuss later, and reading a bunch about what this ordinance is all about. The two lawyers in our little task force, Tom Prahadich and Angelo, Wyatt's a former criminal attorney, former federal prosecutor, and Tom is a civil attorney. So we have lots of legal help, looked at the laws, looked at the reasoning for this ordinance, et cetera, and they're going to talk about that later. So we drafted a position statement that we brought to a regular board meeting on May 20th and presented that to the board. And there were a number of community members at actually both of these board member meetings. And the executive board approved the position statement unanimously with a slight change that was offered by Barbara Triplett and we brought in. Appreciate it. And so that's the statement we're bringing to you all today for consideration and hopefully approval. Again, you have an opportunity as you hear more to offer amendments to this, and so we'll be talking about that. We've also kind of decided this is a major issue that I've certainly learned a lot more about for the community, and we're thinking this might be just kind of an initial stab at this, that there are a lot of things that we may or may not be able to do. As you know, whether the county will take our input on the things particularly not regarding the main part of their ordinance, but at least they can hear from us what we think. And it might be that we want to have a continuing task force set up on this and in the future. So keep that in mind as we go forward. And so all of your input's going to be helpful on whether we decide we want to pursue further work on this. So our position on the ordinance, I'm just going to go ahead and read the letter part of the position statement. And let me go to that. Okay, and I've mentioned that when it's approved, the final version of it will have in this first paragraph that the membership approved it and the votes, the number of votes on either side. So there will be a statement about that will be added in. We felt like it was presumptuous to do it up front. So this letter is directed to the Tillamook County Board of Commissioners, and they're the ones that are holding the hearing. And it would be from the Nesco Citizen Advisory Committee. So this is being brought to you by the Executive Board. Do I have any questions so far before I read this? If anyone has any questions, please. Oh, let me just say, because we have so many people, please put in the chat that you have a question, because we can't see you if you have any, just with particularly when we're sharing the screen. Is there someone who can volunteer to monitor the chat?
I can monitor the chat, Nancy.
Thank you, Candace. Okay, so far I'm not hearing anything. So the NCAC appreciates the opportunity to comment on the proposed Tillamook County fireworks ordinance. We are concerned about lessening the class of violation and associated penalties presented on the proposed ordinance. In addition, we plead for added enforcement of current law. Although 4th of July fireworks have been a part of Nesquin for many decades, the incidence of legal fireworks in our community has increased, due in part to complete fireworks bans in places like nearby Lincoln City. Many Nesquin residents and property owners are highly concerned about the danger of unpermitted fireworks. These unbridled displays of celebration have negative effects on the cleanliness of the beaches, as well as disturbing wildlife, pets, and people. Fireworks present as a fire hazard and often contain harmful chemicals that subsequently pollute the land and ocean. Fireworks are no longer confined to the 4th of July and New Year's Eve. Instead, they begin at least 2 weeks before Independence Day and continue well afterward. They often start early in the morning and carry on late into the night. Fireworks that are legal in some neighboring states are brought into our community, increasing both their availability and use. These commercial-grade fireworks are large, loud, and dangerous. Although most are set off on the beach, many are also used in residential neighborhoods. The NCAC requests that the commissioners amend the proposed ordinance to make the ordinance consistent with Oregon law and the Oregon State Fire Marshal regulations regarding penalties for fireworks violations. And this is where we get into what we'd like them to do. The NCAC also requests that the commissioners consider adopting or amending the proposed fireworks ordinance to add penalties for vicarious liability for adults when children violate the ordinance, establish dates and times curfews for legal fireworks, provide resources to enforce the law, perhaps partnering with multiple agencies responsible for enforcement of the law in Oregon, enforce cleanup of Tillamook County beaches, including Nesquin beaches, on July 5th and for 2 weeks following, as well as after New Year's Eve. Provide signage and other notifications of the law and penalties in Tillamook County, including at entrances in Nesquin and on its beaches. Just an aside, we do understand that a number of these things have been tried in the past, and signs have been burned and taken down, and lots of things are happening, but we still want them to do it. Add specific fireworks ordinance information that covers both legal consumer fireworks and fireworks that can require special permits to short-term renters information. And also, as an aside, I have talked with Hillary, who's here, and she has shared what is currently provided to renters through the Good Neighbor policy. And there is something about fireworks. So, but there might be some things that we could do. It's not just STRs, it's renters in general, residents, et cetera, to explain the law, and J-trippers. So that's the letter that would accompany the position statement itself. We're now going to get into, and I'm going to, is there anything in the chat at this point?
Yeah, Nancy, someone, BM Allen just made a grammatical correction maybe on the beginning of the letter. Instead of, he said, we plead, should be we plead for added enforcement. I'm not, I don't know if should be plead.
I think you're right. I think nobody else has.
So that was it.
One.
Nope. That's the only comment.
All right, thank you. Thank you. Any more of those, please let us know. Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Tom Prahodich now to talk about our position, the first part of the position statement. And you're muted, Tom.
Sorry about that. Before I start, thanks to Hillary for reminding us what the Good Neighbor policy says about fireworks. This is pretty much what the Oregon State Fire Marshal says, and we'll talk about that in a minute. I'm going to read the first part of the position statement of the Nesquin Citizen Advisory Committee regarding proposed Tillamook County fireworks ordinance that was approved by the Executive Board on May the 20th, 2026. NCAC position. The NCA takes no position concerning all but one section of the proposed ordinance. In Oregon, certain fireworks are legal and can be used without a permit from the Oregon State Fire Marshal. For example, certain consumer fireworks, which is a defined term, such as flitter sparklers, fountains, smoke devices, ground spinners, wheels, and novelty devices. Other fireworks are illegal unless authorized by a limited valid permit from the State Fire Marshal, and only after an applicant demonstrates the ability to follow permitting procedures requiring significant public protections. For example, certain consumer fireworks and display fireworks, both of which are again defined by the state statute, such as skyrockets, missiles, cherry bombs, M80s, Roman candles, firecrackers, and cherry bombs. Although it could be clear, Section 6 of the proposed ordinance regarding fireworks prohibition does not reduce the state restrictions regarding permissible fireworks as it cannot, and thus is consistent with Oregon law. However, with all due respect to the arguments advanced by those in favor of Section 7 of the proposed ordinance regarding penalties, which then footnotes May the 7th, a newspaper article by the sheriff, which you can see. The NCAC does not support Section 7's reduction of penalties for illegal, non-permitted fireworks because it is inconsistent with Oregon law and regulations regarding criminal and civil penalties for fireworks violations, and as a result, reduces the deterrent effect of such penalties. In addition, the NCAC also requests that the commissioners consider adopting or amending the proposed fireworks ordinance to include, among other things, specific language regarding the culpability of adults when children under their care violate the ordinance, regulations for curfews of dates and times for which legal fireworks may occur, and additional provisions described in the cover letter to this position statement dated May the 23rd, 2026. The NCA's reasoning and concerns are set forth below. One short parenthetical to this, it ought to be clear by this point that the proposed ordinance does not change what's legal or illegal, prohibited or not prohibited, permitted or not permitted as fireworks usage in Oregon. And as a consequence, we're not taking a position on that either. One other thing to add is that a number of people that have attended meetings have expressed that they would like to have a total ban of fireworks. Obviously, or maybe not obviously, but the proposed ordinance doesn't deal with that. This position statement doesn't deal with that. And my personal view is that if that's something that is to be considered, it's going to be considered by the commissioners over a very long period of public hearings and research and vetting, much like the consideration of the STR ordinance that was passed in July of or adopted by the commissioners in July of 2023, or it would have to be done by ballot measure. But if there may be questions about that later, we can address those, but that's the parenthetical. And so now I will turn it over to Wyatt Angelo to read the section on enforcement.
And before you do that, I just want to comment on your last comment, Tom. We also have heard from people on the opposite end that this is a culture and they'd like to retain the culture. So we're hearing both sides, and we've tried to take kind of a middle approach. Thank you. Wyatt.
Yeah, I'm going to mostly paraphrase here rather than try to bore people to death with the section. But
and let me just ask you if you could move your camera down a little, Wyatt, so we can see all of your lovely face.
Sorry, Nancy, what'd you say?
Oh, would you please move your camera down so we can see your face?
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
The fireworks ordinances never been enforced that at least most people are aware of, other than the permitting process that goes on with respect to the state fire marshal. And so you're all aware, or at least many of you are, that the fireworks go on not only into the early morning hours, but also before and after the 4th of July, New Year's, and at other times that are more variant, I guess. It's a reflection of another problem that we have, and that is that there is very little by way of law enforcement presence in the South County for reasons that we are unsure about at this point, but one can assert that at least they're to some extent by virtue of financial resource or possibly even policy. But the lack of enforcement obviously has created an atmosphere here which allows people to believe that it's all perfectly appropriate. And until such time as it's enforced, that's not going to change.
Okay, thank you. We're going to move on to Tom Syke now to talk about the scope of the problem.
Okay, in the spirit that Wyatt started, I'll paraphrase some of this, but I think maybe the introductory paragraph is important. Nesquin is a beachfront destination that attracts many visitors over the holidays, some of whom bring unregulated fireworks. In addition, a culture of illegal fireworks, often combined with alcohol, exists and has grown over the decades. Some NCAC members, even those who normally enjoy fireworks, describe the feeling like they are in a war zone with smoke and noise. And the rest of it is essentially a restatement of what's been said before. But what's important is that I was first made aware of a general dissatisfaction with fireworks as a part of the work that we've done with the community plan. It was brought up, I don't remember exactly by whom, but it was brought up during our deliberations on what the values, vision values are for Nesquin. And that was one of the things which was brought up, is that there is a problem with fireworks. Now, at the same time, there were people also advocating in favor of fireworks. But what we didn't have is a discussion of the kinds of fireworks that are to be, shall we say, tolerated. So we made no differentiation between fireworks that are like sparklers and fountains, which are permitted, are allowed, and those which are really require professional expertise to execute. So what we are mostly talking about is a problem with those things which are now illegal, and we don't want to have the penalties for those reduced. Done.
Okay, thank you, Tom. I'd like to just add that we're finding that a lot of people are not aware that their activities are legal. We actually just heard that in a recent community plan subcommittee meeting, where people who've had fireworks displays for 50 years with their families and had always thought they were legal and have been very safe about approaching them, didn't realize they needed a permit. So that's always an option, and there's certain training and different kinds of rigor with getting a permit. So one of the NCA, the Nesquin Community Association, used to have its own fireworks display, and they had a permit, and they decided in recent years to not do that. And they've been actually quite interested in having enforcement of fireworks issues too. And another family, and I'm going to, Parelis family has been getting a permit each year near Proposal Rock, and so that they're permitted and they are legal. Okay, so I'm going to turn it back over to Tom Prihodich. Thank you, Tom Syke and Wyatt, to talk about potential legal and other practical issues.
I think we're going to Wyatt first.
Okay, that's right. It was Tom and Wyatt together. Thank you.
Okay. The change in classification to a county ordinance violation is essentially creating a traffic ticket for fireworks that are illegal. The current state law, however, has indicated, or at least required, that fireworks violations of the types of illegal fireworks for possession or discharge are Class B misdemeanor. And I perceive that the reason for the ordinance may well be the difficulties in creating having a trial on matters of fireworks violations, which is required by the state law. As a Class B misdemeanor, any person is entitled to a jury trial, speedy trial. They are entitled to the appointment of counsel because in the event they can't afford one, because of the fact that it potentially carries a jail sentence in addition to the fine structure, which is highly unlikely in a first offense, but certainly possible. And as a result, more investigation is required because the burden of proof is beyond a reasonable doubt. To change the classification into a county ordinance violation, which doesn't carry any type of criminal penalty, but only a civil penalty for possession or discharge, creates a simplified procedure for the county whereby a sheriff's department officer would issue the equivalent of a speeding ticket. The trial, if any, is to a justice of the peace, and it doesn't require witness testimony for the defense. It can be put in by written statement or otherwise. And so therefore it becomes highly simplified. And as a result of that, because it doesn't meet constitutional requirements, only has a potential fine involved. And so there is, as I read it, and I think based upon the experience that we've had down here, it appears that the sheriff, in trying to make sure that his resources are adequate and not having to devote resources to fireworks violations, which require essentially a criminal investigation, which he may not feel that his deputies have the capacity to do or the investigative resources to accomplish, and this is the reason. But until such time, as I pointed out, that people are made aware and that there are a certain amount of enforcement of the state statute, the position is really that we don't see any reason to reduce the penalty of it without some kind of enforcement effort. And so that's what I perceive as to be the reasoning behind the statute, and it's ill-advised because it doesn't really think through the problem.
Okay, thank you, Wyatt.
Then I think it's me. I always have to do this disclaimer. I'm not an Oregon attorney. I am a lawyer. I am a recently retired, my bar card says inactive Texas lawyer. And I think the same is true of Wyatt in that he's retired. He was a Colorado lawyer, I think. But having said that, I've spent a lot of time reading law, and more importantly, I am a citizen. And as a citizen and as citizens, there is a presumption that we know the law regarding our actions and inactions in the world, so that ignorance of the law is no defense, it's often said. And so we thought it would be advisable as we're going through this process to look at Oregon law. And one qualifier, a slight qualifier to what Nancy said earlier about there are two sides. There's the ban and there's the people that want to continue to do what they do. Oregon law is Oregon law, and Oregon law allows subdivisions of the state, jurisdictions that are subdivisions of the state, to increase the prohibitions, including bans. It does not allow them to reduce prohibitions. And so there's much of what's happening, we believe, in Nescoin and throughout the county, as by the way, does the sheriff. The sheriff acknowledges that the problem has gotten worse. There's much that's happening that it would be otherwise prohibited or is prohibited under Oregon law. So anyway, to understand Oregon law and regulations regarding fireworks permitting regulations and penalties, you have to first begin with the Oregon fireworks statute, which I suggest everybody do, frankly. And without Nancy's warned me not to go too deeply into statutory authority and citing statutory authority, but the statute is in chapter 480 of the Oregon Revised Statute. But what that statute does is lay out the general framework for fireworks permitting regulations and penalties and puts the Oregon State Fire Marshal in charge of all of that. And says that the Oregon State Fire Marshal shall adopt administrative rules, adopt reasonable rules that will govern permitting regulation and everything having to do with the fireworks statute. The chapter 480, which is the Oregon statute, is really fairly short. What's much longer is the administrative regulations of the fire marshal, which is in Oregon Administrative Rules, Chapter 837, Division 12. And I'm not going to go any further in citing those. But those are things to look at. And beyond that, to look at what the fire marshal itself says about what the rules are and what the penalties are. And I suggest to everybody that is interested in this, and I think Nancy knows how to post this in the chat, to look at the Oregon State Fire Marshal's website, which talks about what's illegal and legal, which is identical to what we say at the beginning of our position statements, illegal and legal. Talks about what the penalties, or at least some of the penalties are, and also has frequently asked questions that it addresses. One thing I will say that I want to advise people when they look at it, the Oregon Fire Marshal says on 2 occasions on their website in the fireworks section that all fireworks are prohibited on beaches. And that's confusing because obviously they have permitted a fireworks display and in Nesquin, and I've also done so in Lincoln City. Lincoln City, as you know, and I keep hearing this, Lincoln City banned fireworks. Well, they kind of banned fireworks. They banned most fireworks. They're going to have a public display of fireworks at Devil's Lake on July the 4th. So I advise you to look at the Oregon Fire Marshal's website. And what gives me some feeling that we're on the right track on what the law requires is that the ultimate enforcer and interpreter of Oregon fireworks law, the Oregon Fire Marshal, says that what we're saying is correct. So if you, and the other thing to point out, and I actually learned something new today, and I'm going to, maybe we should add, the State Fire Marshal is the ultimate enforcement authority of fireworks regulations in the state, including penalties. Other enforcers of Oregon fireworks law and regulations include not only the county sheriff, but also the state police, rural fire districts, state parks and recreation. And what I learned today is that in reading the statute more closely is county courts who are responsible for the supervision of all of this. So the State Fire Marshal has the ultimate enforcement authority, but there are others that have authority. What the State Fire Marshal, you've got 2 provisions in the Oregon statute that lay out civil penalties. One is civil penalty for parents whose children in using fireworks cause a fire or requires fire suppression up to $5,000 per act, and a civil penalty of $500, which is on top of all the criminal stuff. And at the very end of the fire marshal administrative rules, the fire marshal lays out additional civil penalties and criminal penalties. The first is well, again, it's a Class B misdemeanor. The sentence for a Class B misdemeanor is a maximum of 6 months imprisonment. The sentence to pay a fine is up to a $2,500 maximum. The either the state statute itself or the administrative rules include a maximum civil penalty of $500, as I said, confiscation or destruction of illegal fireworks, substantial parental liability for damages caused by children, and other civil damages. And I'll say beyond that, as a civil lawyer, that if someone is hurt or some property is damaged or wildfire is created, their damage is beyond the statute itself in civil lawsuits brought by the people whose person or property has been harmed. So now these penalties as they're laid out by the state fire marshal could seem pretty tough. But one thing to keep in mind is that there is the concept of lesser included offenses. And there is another provision elsewhere in the Oregon statutes that gives discretion to a county attorney in a particular case to charge what would be a Class B misdemeanor as a Class C violation, which could be, or excuse me, as a violation, which could be either anywhere between a Class A violation, which is more punitive, to a Class C violation. So that's the law. And as we were looking at it as a committee, and I'm assuming the executive board is following, or the NCAC executive board and following our recommendations is thinking the same thing, is that if you enact a fireworks ordinance like this, it's going to be hard to retract it. It's an emergency ordinance. I'm somewhat sympathetic to the sheriff because his position is we've got too much territory to cover, and it's too expensive, and I don't have enough people, and so we'll just give people what are essentially traffic tickets. But we all hope that someday the fireworks rules and regulations are going to be enforced by the collection of people, including, most importantly, the Oregon State Fire Marshal, that are responsible for them. And that the penalties that exist, which allow for lesser included offenses, are a deterrent, which a traffic ticket is not. And as White explained, I think White may have left out this. If you look at the proposed ordinance, the maximum Class C violation is a $500 fine. The minimum is an $85 fine. And the presumptive fine is $165. So it's like a traffic ticket, except at least with the traffic ticket, it has the deterrent effect of it showing up with your auto insurance and affecting that. It's not clear how this would affect anything other than probably paying $165. The other concern we have, the other thing is that we don't want to take a position now where someone might later argue that we've waived our right to argue something differently. I mean, we did consider taking no position on the proposed ordinance, and at least some of our concern was, this isn't really how we feel. We don't want to waive our right later to argue something different and have somebody cite this against us. And finally, unless somebody can show me something different or us different, I think that this penalty section of the ordinance is probably in contravention of Oregon law. There is a doctrine called state preemption doctrine that says if the state lays out rules, regulations, penalties, and a subdivision of the state lays out rules, regulations, and penalties that are lesser or more or different than what the state has done, the state law prevails. It's possible that this penalty structure is in contravention of state law and therefore would be null and void if a court heard it. And what we say is we're not Oregon attorneys. It's not our business to come up with the law on that, but it is something that the commissioners should consider with their counsel so that they don't approve something that is null and void if it's heard in court. And so that's some stuff.
Thank you very much, Tom. And Tom has done an incredible amount of research on the law, as you can tell, about this. And Tom Prahanich, I tried to find the link, and I'm sorry, I'm a little distracted at the moment. Is there somebody who can find the link to the fire marshal? Just put it in the chat.
Okay.
Directly, that'd be great. Thank you.
You're asking me to do something that I may technologically be unable
to.
Or
somebody else could volunteer because you're also going to be answering questions. So there's somebody else who could volunteer.
I have it. I have it booked, so I think.
Okay, great.
Tom,
thank you.
Nancy, is there? I just want to know when it's open.
Okay, we're just about to get there.
When is it time for public comment?
Jeff, it's going to be there in just a moment. Oh. So we're just finishing up the presentation part, and I don't think. And then we're going to open it up for discussion. So I'm going to, before I open it up, I want to ask people to please put in the chat that you would like to speak. And then we will go in order of who's in the chat, because otherwise we just can't tell who's wanting to speak. I'm going to stop sharing.
Nancy?
You can always pull this back up.
There's 2 comments from Guy in the chat.
Okay.
Okay, the first one is, can the county adopt a charge that is lesser than state law? And the second question is, do we believe that lessening the penalty will increase enforcement?
Tom Prahanich, do you want to take that?
I'm so busy.
Okay.
trying to figure
so
out.
I think probably, Guy, your question was answered after you probably asked it, correct?
Well, it was, I think, in Tom's last comment about I personally can't believe that the county has this option to change the level of the crime state law, but and he brought that up and said the possibility of having this whole thing declared null and void. And then last question in terms of is that in the sheriff's letter he doesn't say that this is going to increase enforcement given that we have a lesser penalty. So there's no promise that we're going to actually see people here, an increase in enforcement here in Neskowin because the charge will be less. So that I haven't heard that or seen that yet. So that was my question. Do people believe that's going to happen?
Right. So let me address actually both of those very quickly since Tom's working. One of the reasons that the position statement is so detailed there at the end with the law is that we feel that it's important to make sure that the county attorney understands these issues that we're raising and wants to take a look at this further before they pass this ordinance. And so that's why it is a very detailed legal section in there. The other side is I did listen to the public hearing video from the March 13th, which was the initial public hearing, number 2. And the sheriff did talk about he did specifically say he didn't think it would change the number of officers that they might have available to enforce. So it's pretty interesting there. Who's next on the chat, Candace?
It is. Tom put his.
Yeah, I kind of messed it up. Let me.
Yeah. So there's no other. Brandon Booza has a question for Tom.
Brandon. Thank you. And please say which Tom's.
Tom Prahanich.
I'm guessing. Thank you. Go ahead, Brandon.
This is Tom. You're way more sophisticated than I am. I'm not smart enough to understand this. I've been watching the fireworks for 4th of July, for New Year's, for 30 years. Doesn't seem like it's a lot different. I watch the beach. I've also seen no enforcement. If you live in Oregon, it's impossible to understand, if you've ever been to a fireworks stand, why anything that flies would be illegal, because that's just how it's always been. So I really am confused as to why the level of discussion for an activity that has been illegal for decades. I just don't understand why we're talking about something that is already banned and there's been zero enforcement. And I just don't. I'm just confused. It seems very simple to me.
So Wyatt, do you want to take that? I know he directed it at Tom, but
Yeah, just a comment. The most fireworks stands are inspected by some form of the fire marshal or city fire marshals for illegal fireworks. But the problem is that there are illegal fireworks available right across the state line.
No, I'm aware of that. That wasn't the question.
the question is why we took this up at all.
What we're talking about, the activities, the fireworks that people are concerned about, if you've ever watched a show, are all illegal fireworks, right? The flying things. And so
No,
it's something that's been illegal. I mean, that's what makes the most noise. That's what's, the most dangerous, right? That's why the state banned them. So I'm just confused because it's the illegal stuff is, as growing up here as a kid, right? They couldn't be any more boring. A smoke ball. I mean, you can't hurt anybody and they're not that much fun, which is why people come to the code. So I just don't understand. It's already illegal. So if the state has decided, the county has decided not to do any enforcement, then all this, these details seem kind of sort of ridiculous to me.
Tom Seib would like to answer that.
Yeah, first of all, we were asked for our opinion. So therefore, we had to deliberate about what it is. And the issue isn't whether or not it's being enforced or not being enforced. We don't know what kind of deterrent effect it being illegal has been. But we can guess that if it's less illegal, that would actually be an encouragement for people to ignore things. That's unproven, unprovable. But the bottom line is we were asked for an opinion by the county. We are a county, not an agency. We are an arm of the county. And we have to do our due diligence. And that's what we're doing.
Yeah, I'll add that, there are only, 31, 32 people at this meeting. It's shocking to me. I would think there would be 100 to 200 people at the meeting. And I predicted at least 50 to 100. I mean, what I think the NCAC is saying and is hearing, and the NCA, the Nesco Community Association, is hearing that there is an increasing concern about the use of fireworks, illegal fireworks, non-curfewed fireworks. This committee, and I think the NCAC fully understands that, the NCAC, the Nesco Community Association, for years put on a permitted show that was allowed by the fire marshal. That's been taken over by the Perelius family or group, and with the assistance of donations from other people, and that's been permitted through the Oregon State Fire Marshal permitting process and the Oregon State Parks and Recreation. The Nesco Community Association, its board put out something very similar to this in terms of the concerns regarding fireworks and the illegal use of fireworks. They didn't touch the ordinance because they weren't asked to. The NCAC is asked to because it is a advisory committee to the Board of Commissioners. That's its remit. So I don't know if that answers your question. I know there are a lot of people that have been here for 50 years. I've been coming here for 25, only lived here for 10. Generations of families that have done fireworks. My sense is that there is at least a majority view, if not a consensus, that they're out of control.
All I'm saying is, I just think it's funny when we're talking about something that it is illegal and has always been illegal. And if you don't know that, then yeah, it's embarrassing. I would be embarrassed.
Well, I think a lot of people did not know. That's kind of one of the things we're hearing. And Candace has in the chat that she would like to make a comment.
Yeah, I know where Brandon's coming from, but it's not only the fireworks on July 4th that are disturbing and disruptive. It's the ones that go on in September, October, November at 1:30 in the morning. those are, I mean, just because 50,000 people pick their nose doesn't mean it's right. I mean, it's, no one likes these illegal fireworks. And some of them just in March, someone set off M80s at 4 p.m. in the afternoon.
I don't light fireworks. I'm not advocating. I just think it's funny. We're talking about something that's illegal. So,
I think it's time that I think it's time that we enforce, if we can, as best we can.
In the absence of enforcement, then I just think it's all irrelevant.
Brandon, go ahead, Tom.
No, I'll let you. Very briefly, I mean, I think the next step, I mean, most people here think that it's either the sheriff or Parks and Recreation that are responsible for this. I mean, we could talk about action items and how we might handle it politically when it's the Oregon State Fire Marshal that is the ultimate enforcer. I mean, it's so the sheriff has difficulty. The state police have authority. Did I leave them out? I think I did. You can call the state police and they can come in and immediately enforce it if they'll come in from Salem, wherever they are. So I think it's we want better enforcement, or I say we. I think the majority or consensus wants better enforcement. And if enforcement means all you have to do is pay an $85 fine or a presumptive $165 fine, people that have spent $10,000 to $20,000 on fireworks, that's not going to be much of an impediment.
Yeah, I was going to say. I think what we're finding, Brandon, is this was kind of a surprise when this came in. And as we've brought this up in different meetings and through emails and conversations, it's a huge issue. And so you're right. I mean, this has been happening for forever. It's getting worse from what we hear and what a lot of people are seeing. But, I think that it's been a worthy discussion to have. And of course, enforcement or lack thereof is a key. But I think it's important for us to take a position, give it to the county, and then, as we said at the beginning, we may want to continue this discussion and see what can be done on practical terms for improving things in the future, so that people understand that they can go out and get permits, which means they need training and things will be safer. But we definitely need some enforcement. It's a huge issue. And one of the things that emerged too in these discussions is that South County does seem to have fewer resources that are provided for enforcement, not just of fireworks, but all sorts of other things. And so I think all of this might be an interesting thing for the NCAC to consider taking on in the future.
I think it would be helpful to have support, right? Because I would say two things. Anecdotally, I don't know, I don't get the sense that this group is maybe watching the shows for 4th of July, but I can tell you that it appears to be a majority of the people would be not in agreement with the consensus of this group, because everybody seems to have illegal fireworks down there in large groups, right? So, people are unhappy with fireworks at 2:00 in the morning, but everybody on the beach seems to have an opposite view. And I would just venture a guess that because there are no major injuries that I'm aware of, then that's probably another reason why there's been no enforcement. So if we're kind of anxious and talking about the danger of it, then it's probably really good to get all the details of all the ambulance visits and hospital visits because of all the injuries that happened on the coast. I mean, it'd be good to be armed with facts versus speculation if we want to move forward on that, I think.
Yeah, so we're not advocating changing the law. In fact, we're advocating just keeping the laws the same. That's kind of the bottom line.
Nancy, is Jeff Walton here. I can't.
Yeah. Hi, Jeff.
I can't get my. I'm not access. I can't get access to my chat. So
okay, well, go for it. I don't.
I want. Okay.
You're in line. You're on because no one else has put anything in the chat.
Okay.
That I can see.
All right. So the gentleman is just speaking about how realistic this issue is. I'm standing with him on the matter, not so much that anybody's advocating for this. I've been down there. It's a war zone. It's pretty frightening. And seeing fireworks go off right in the middle of town, and it's unnerving. And I don't want to minimize that. I just want to share my experience, because about 25 years ago, I was on the NCA, and and I got tagged when I told this story to Nancy. I'll just share it with you guys quickly. Do something about the fireworks, Jeff. Okay. First of all, we're talking about two different jurisdictions. One county, that's the roads in town, and state parks, which is the state. Okay. So we got to remember there's two jurisdictions there. And of course, obviously, most of it's going on in state jurisdictions. So the county really plays a minor role on, we'll just say, fireworks volume. So I went down there, decided to figure out with state parks and asked them why they don't enforce. Went down to Newport. And I took a while to get an appointment, but I got one. I said, just lay it to me straight. Why? And it was bad then, quite worse now. They said, well, sir, we're going to share a story with you. We sent a crew. There was an illegal fireworks show going on in Oceanside. And they had a brand new 4-wheel drive truck. They had 4, call them officers or agents, state parks. They have badges, but no guns, but they have the authority to cite. So they went down there, and there's this huge party down there. You can just imagine. And alcohol. And they drove up to the party and said, you must stop. Well, we're going to cite you. They quickly turned the batteries of their tubes right at them, fired right at them, and burned their brand new truck down to the ground right on the beach and scattered the agents all over. And they said, you know what? We're not it's just not worth it to us. We're not going to put our lives in the line for this, to enforce this. So sorry, maybe you shouldn't be in Nesquin or anywhere else on the 4th of July. Maybe you want to hang out in Otis or something. That's what she said. But she was really honest. And so I think to really move the ball in the fireworks, it really has to be something that is actually doable. But a lot of people feel really strongly about being able to celebrate the 4th of July. Granted, 2 a.m. is sort of ridiculous, or on September 1st, or whatever occasion they choose. But without any mechanism, since frankly, zero mechanism for enforcement, the ordinances really don't matter. It's just like speeding is 55, but I know people don't go 55. So anyway, I thought I'd just share that story with you. I took a shot at it, no pun intended, and I got that story. So hopefully that helps people. I don't want to minimize people's concerns at all. I see it, but this is one it's a pretty big deal and tough to manage when you don't have any enforcement. Yeah. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Jeff. Looks like Carol Hook. Would you like me to read your comment, or do you want to comment yourself? I'll read your comment. Personal injury is not the only concern of using illegal fireworks. The issue of sound and ecological pollution, and fire danger are also major concerns. Yes. Thank you, Carol. And I think we've captured that in the letter and in the position statement. It's absolutely correct.
Can I respond to Jeff?
Yes.
Yeah,
Tom.
Jeff, I've heard that too. But in looking at the law and the rules, the Parks and Recreation is the weakest of all of the enforcers. State police is the strongest.
Yeah, I think, thank you.
I suggested to Alex Clark and White Angelo that pursuant to the statute itself, that the rural fire department be responsible for enforcement, since they're both volunteers on the rural fire department. They did seem to be very excited about that.
Yeah, thanks for throwing us under the bus there.
Well, Wyatt actually had mentioned that there's a new beach capable fire truck that could go on the beach, and perhaps that would be less threatening than having police or whatever, and maybe they could go out, and also if there's a fire, they could take care of it. So there are some options that we feel like are outside the scope of the ordinance, but we certainly want to pursue. This has really opened up quite a window. So thank you. Thank you, Tom. So Brandon, Buza, the beach can definitely feel unsafe at times on the 4th of July. It can be crazy. I understand the comment. Thank you. Wyatt, lack of injuries so far is not a reason for minimizing the problem. All it takes in our area for a Paradise, California type fire is one spark. And Gail Pickett as owner on a beachfront property for over 20 yards or years.
Years.
I agree. Thank you. Oh, I agree with Jeff that it's an increasing issue. And yes, it sounds like a war zone. The key is enforcement. My greatest fear is a fire in the middle of a neighborhood. Yeah, thank you. We've heard that from a lot of people. Thank you. Excellent comments. Hillary, would you like to talk, Hillary? Or do you want me to read your statement?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I was just kind of echoing some things I heard, which is just that my concern is that without enforcement, no matter what the ordinance says, it doesn't matter. So it's kind of like, we're spending all this time, making a 4-page, NCAC statement with all this information about the new ordinance, but none of it matters if nobody enforces it. And then I also just wanted to address, based on the number of people at this meeting, I am actually not sure that it's fair to say that the majority of Nescowan folks feel this strongly about the fireworks. I think a lot of them participate in the fireworks. And so I just wanted to put that out there that, it's not necessarily my opinion, but I'm just saying, I don't know that the majority of Nescowan feels this strongly that that it's out of control.
Okay, thank you, Hillary. And regarding that number, we've published widely to our list, and you and I have had this conversation one-on-one as well, that we will put in the document how many votes there were for and against, and or any amendments as well. So it will show that there were 30 people at the meeting, and there may be more because there may be more than one person here on a site. We'll talk about that when we get to a vote, but you're right. It's the best we can do for now. We've sent it out widely multiple times, and so that's. We do think, we're not saying that we represent all of Nescowan. We're saying that we're representing the NCAC for what that's worth. That's about the best we can do. So thank you.
That's a great solution. Yeah. And then if you and I talked about, the short-term rental things, I'm also always happy to share with the local managers and other owners, like a reminder. I think that the graphic that was shared at a previous meeting about the illegal versus legal fireworks is something that we could at least spread the information. It's up to other owners and property managers to share that with guests. But, for that week of the 4th of July, we could help with that if that would be helpful.
That would. Thank you so much. We appreciate that very much. Gail Pickett, timing. Gerald Hoke, today is very busy in Nescowan. We had trash to treasures, and this is a holiday weekend. County did not allow enough time for a comment, and this was a bad time for a meeting as a result. That's a good point. That's why there are fewer people here. This is a very busy weekend. I appreciate, and I should have said this at the beginning, I really appreciate that you could make time on this busy holiday weekend to attend with all these other things going on. The county did not, and that's something that I asked them, why is this on an emergency basis like this where we had very little time to respond? And we were told that apparently for an ordinance to take effect, they need 90 days after approval of the ordinance, unless it's on an emergency schedule. And with the July 4th being so close, that's why they did it on an emergency basis. But still, it put all of us under a real constraint here. So thank you for that. Any other comments before we go make a motion?
Nancy, I just have, this is Guy. Just one comment. I listened to Hillary. We were ones that suffered a short-term rental that was that neighbor was a neighbor for us, and they set off fireworks, which because of the way the wind was blowing, they blew on top of our roof, and so anyways, we had to go up on our roof and go talk to the people, and of course they were drinking and created a scene. And I called the manager. It was a large short-term rental company around here, and they were concerned, and their response was, "We will not let those people rent through us again. We'll put them on some kind of list." That was their response. Of course, I don't know how many names were on there or whatever. But my question is, what can aside from calling the managers, the names that we now, I think, are required to be listed in front of short-term rentals, what can be done with folks who
You can also call the sheriff's office. In fact, the sheriff said they monitor calls for complaints about fireworks. And even if they don't come out because they're limited, they will keep track of complaints. And it sounds like they may use that data to decide whether they're going to have more personnel out at certain beaches. So that's actually something I would like to say. Well, let me just finish.
Sure.
I think that is something I would like people to understand, is that if they are having some concerns, call and get on that data list about things that are happening at the time. And if it's urgent, call the fire department, so, but you're curious about whether that's the proper procedure for a short-term rental property.
No, my question is, what can short-term rental managers really do? Aside from putting giving a notice out, telling people what the rules are, what other kinds of things are people who, when you do get a complaint and some, people call and say at this particular house or whatever, they're doing this, aside from taking that name and maybe not letting them do a rental again. I mean, what other actions can they take?
I can kind of maybe shed a little bit of light on that if you'd like.
And Hillary, could you introduce your position?
Yeah, sorry. My name's Hillary Dixon, and I am a homeowner. I also lead a group of Oregon Coast Hosts, and we kind of are like an organized group. Look, I'm advocating for balanced regulations for short-term rentals and like tourists in Tillamook County. But one of the things, our kind of enforcement is kind of limited to what guests do at our homes. And so sometimes I've heard, like, if somebody's guest is shooting off fireworks on the beach, that somebody calls the hotline and the hotline tells them there's nothing we can do because that guest is doing something at the beach. So if it's right next door to you, that is a problem. Not saying it's not a problem at the beach, don't get me wrong. It's just that our kind of actions or what we can enforce is limited to the property itself. And so one of the things I would recommend that you do is, you can call the hotline. You've got the property manager. Some I've personally found are less responsive than others. And I understand the frustration as somebody who's had to call the short-term rental hotline and calling that 24/7 contact person and kind of not getting very far with having them understand the urgency of something. I also have a list of a lot of the owners. And so if it's something that's local in Neskowin, anybody's also always welcome to reach out to me directly, because all the contact numbers are for the large property management group. So that owner might never hear that they had a guest that was shooting off fireworks and bothering their neighbor, because the property management company is paid to handle that for the owner. So the owner themselves might not be aware of that at all. And so I, self-manage, but not everybody does that. But a lot of the people who have property managers would like to know if they had a problematic guest like that. And so that sort of helps. Just reaching the owner can kind of help add a little bit more accountability. And also we do have the ability a little bit to cancel somebody's reservation if they are doing something like that. That's a personal safety thing. If it's against the rules, if they signed a contract, if it's very clear. So personally, I have a contract that's very clear. I'm able to cancel somebody's reservation if they do something like that. Airbnb and VRBO make that very difficult for owners. We have to call and email and all these things multiple times so that we're not penalized, but it is technically possible. It just kind of varies depending on which website they book through.
Thanks.
Thank you, Hillary. Could you put in your chat how they should best contact you? I don't know if it'd be over through Oregon Host or whatever. Tom has his hand up, and then Candace is in the chat.
Guy, given what I now know, if one experiences a harm, as you did, I'm calling, if it happened to me, I'm calling the state police, because it's a violation of the law. And they have shown up in the past.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my solution. If it's a harm, if you're just looking out at the beach, there's a bunch of fireworks that you don't like, they might show up for that and they may not, but that's what I would do. I wanted to add one other thing. We're supposed to have the worst El Nino since 1877, and it's clear it's going to be much drier and hotter. And some of us live next to, well, we all do. We live next to a national forest. Some of us within 100 yards of a national forest. And on 2 occasions in the last few years, campers or someone else have set fires up there. One took a few hours to put out, and one took the fire department or the fire departments a full day to put out. And in conjunction with that is there are people who above us, whether they're renters or they're owners, who set off fireworks at the worst part of the fireworks season within 100 yards of the national forest. And so, it may be true that we need to look into what injuries have happened in the past, but, something's going to happen.
Mhm.
And instead of being proactive, we need to be reactive. Excuse me, we need to be proactive rather than reactive.
Thank you. Thank you, Tom. So I'm going to go to Candace, and then Wyatt has his hand up, and I am going to ask people to please use the chat because I can't tell sequence when people are raising hands, and sometimes I don't even see hands.
Yeah.
But go ahead, Candace.
Yeah, I just want to let everyone, we call several times a year with the aerial fireworks that go off, and it's not July 4th. It's during the year, like March, September, like I said before. And they will say they'll log it, which is important, and they will send a deputy if there's one in the area. So they do that. And when we called about the one in March with the M80s going off, there was also someone shooting off a gun in North Neskowin. So they actually sent a deputy out, but it was an hour later. But they will send somebody out if they've got somebody in the area. So, but I would just call. Yes, they may not do anything, but it'll be logged. And if they see a lot of these calls, it means that there's a problem. So just call. And also wanted to make one comment. I probably didn't do this one time when Hillary said that. There were actually some at a vacation when they were sending off fireworks on the deck of someone's SUV. Well, I didn't call. It looked like they had stopped, but I should have called, but I didn't.
Okay. Thank you, Candace. Thank you. Wyatt, and then there's a comment in the chat. So go ahead, Wyatt.
Yeah, with respect to Guy's concern, the one vulnerability of any property is that's a STR is licensure, Guy, and obviously before anybody gets a license revoked, conduct has to be repetitive, but that's certainly the monetary threat to a short-term rental owner, and documenting and photographing and that kind of stuff and filing a complaint with, I think it's community development that licenses those short-term rentals on a property that's invariably or repeatedly in violation of certain ordinances without any action being taken is a grounds for revocation.
Okay, thank you. And I do want to just say, while short-term rentals are sometimes the issue, as we've mentioned before, for people, there are longtime residents who've done this. There are people who come for the day. It's a problem for everybody. So, thank you, Wyatt. Carol, it appears that Tillamook County is attempting to absolve themselves of their responsibility to enforce Oregon state law. Tillamook County is a very poor county. It's something I've been finding more and more. They have very limited resources, and that doesn't excuse them. But I do think in terms of problem solving, it's important because it can take an hour to get from their headquarters in Tillamook down here to South County. And so I kind of think it's something that's arisen as more than a fireworks issue. Just, if you have any kind of problem where we need police, getting somehow stationed down here might be something for us to try to advocate for. So thank you for that. So I'm not seeing anything else in the chat. I would like to suggest that we close this and go to a motion. So let me go through the basic parliamentary procedures. The motion is going to be to approve the position statement and accompanying letter as presented while allowing some minor editorial changes, and actually as amended. I'll throw it up there because I did put in a couple of things. One was changing plea to plead, and another was to add county courts to the list of people who can enforce, agencies who can enforce. But there may be some other little minor change. And the third one would be to add that sentence I mentioned at the top of the letter stating that the NCAC approves this with this many people voting for exempt, blah, 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 blah. If we have any voting against, then we'll talk about a minority report after the vote. If you would like to make an amendment to the motion, please indicate that by putting something in the chat before we vote, and I will give time for that. But can we have a motion to approve the NCAC position statement and accompanying letter as amended? And I'm going to share that. Showing the changes here. So the changes is we'll put the results of the vote here. We've changed to plead here. Thank you for that. And added into here the Tom Prahatic had for community courts. Where is that?
County court, Nancy.
County courts. Thank you. Where is that? It's down in that last section. There it is, the county courts, right there on the right on the bottom. Other than that, also allowing for minor editorial grammar type changes. So could someone make a motion to that effect, please?
So moved.
Okay, thank you, Tom Sipe. So we have a motion on the floor to approve the letter and position statement to go dated May 23rd, 2026 to go to the Tillamook County Board of Commissioners from the NCAC with the edits added. So I'm going to go ahead and the motion is made on behalf of the board, so we don't need a second. Are there any amendments to the motion? Going to give time for people to put something in the chat or just talk. Anyone wants to talk? Okay, I don't hear any. I'm going to go ahead and launch the poll. So if there's more than one person on a Zoom screen, please, and there are two questions. Do not say that you're done with it until you scroll down to the main question. The first question is to establish your membership status. Second question is the actual vote on this issue. So please make sure you scroll down to be able to answer the second question. If there's more than one person on a Zoom screen, you'll need to vote in person or do a voice vote for that. You'll have to turn on your camera and do a voice vote. Otherwise, you're just going to be counted once. I am showing 29. I'll add my yes vote manually because I cannot vote via Zoom. So is anyone having any trouble getting there? At this point, we have 26 people having voted plus me. So there are 2 people who have not voted. Is anyone having any technical difficulties? Okay. Is there anyone who has not voted who wants to vote? Please speak up. And if you're muted, I can't hear you. You can either unmute or put something in the chat. Okay, we're at 28 now. So it looks like we're done. I'm going to go ahead and end the poll and share the results. Okay, so can people see the results? Okay, so we have 18 out of 27 or 67% are residents, 12 or out of 27 or 44% are property owners, and 1 person is none of those, is a visitor. Thank you for visiting. And the motion to approve, we have 22 ayes, so 79%. We have 1 nay, or 4%, and abstain, no opinion. We have 3 or 11%, and 2 not qualified for voting, 7%. And then add me to the aye list, so it'd be 23. All right, stop sharing. The motion passes. So for those three of you, I think three, was it three? One that said no. Did you want to include a minority report to be attached to our report? Whoever that is, you would be welcome to turn on your microphone and let us know. The alternative is, if you don't want to have something attached to our report, then you can go in and send a report individually to the county through the links that we put in the email blast, or we can also put here, and you can also go in person and testify. So, but if you'd like to have your minority report included with our report, let us know now. You can put it in the chat. Okay, so I'm not hearing that anyone would like to have a minority report included, so we will close that. It would be needed to be done really quickly because we have to get this to the county very quickly in advance of the meeting. Okay, so my second, yes. Yes to Jeff. The second thing is that unless there are any objections, I appoint our little fireworks task force to officially represent the NCAC at the Tillamook County public hearing on May 28th. So that would be Wyatt Angelo, Tom Prohodich, Tom Sipe, and myself. Are there any objections to that, or is there anyone else who would like to be official representatives from the NCAC? Okay, hearing none, the committee is appointed to represent us at the hearing. I have approached the commissioner's administrative assistant, and they're trying to see if we can go sequentially. We're only allowed to present for 2 minutes per person. So that's going to be difficult. We're going to try really hard, but we will also be submitting the written document. But I encourage all of you to attend and speak about these issues, and particularly ask for enforcement. Talk about what it's like and ask for enforcement. Talk about the need for education. Talk about whatever, that it's a culture. You like it to continue on a legal basis, on how to do it legally and safely. Be there in a big way. I was kind of surprised that only one person attended the first public hearing and to comment on it. It was the sheriff and one person. So hopefully we'll have a lot more people at 6 o'clock on Thursday. So I just want to thank everybody for all of your time. I want to thank the task force for an incredible amount of work that you guys did on this, on all the research and writing of this, and to all the people who attended the meetings to talk about it and to give us input on it, and for all of you today for your work. We will give you further notice on the results of the hearing, the results of the ordinance. Would anyone else on the task force like to make any comments? Okay, hearing none. Meeting adjourned at 2:59 p.m. And thanks so much.
Thank you all.
I'm going to end the